maybe, oh no. How do I pass this? I want to give a little bit of a different perspective of what we did on the ground, but okay. What we did on the ground. And first, let's start with a bit of context. Rio Grande do Sul, Porto Alegre specifically, is one of the most racially segregated city in Brazil. The capital is, and this reflects very much the disposition of racial groups in the geography of the city. And the heaviest affected neighborhoods in our city were mostly from black and brown people that, you know, have a history of slavery, of being affected by slavery and being displaced to the peripheries of the cities and live in an unplanned manner. So those neighborhoods were the ones most affected and the ones that had the response most delay, while the center of the city was very briefly, you know, put well together. The neighborhoods were sometimes staying over 3 months underwater. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about my organization, Pelo Clima, and how it affected us. So we, in this disaster, you can say all the people from the state were affected. More than 2.2 million people were affected. But specifically, I want to focus on some stories. We have here Natalia, that is in front of her house. We went there to shoot a documentary about the situation that her neighborhood suffered, and she, you know, lives in a neighborhood that was completely wiped out, and her house was a 2-floor house, and even you know, in a very kind of far away from a river. The river rose to 15 meters higher to reach and destroy her neighborhood. We have here William, Renata's husband. Renata is right here. That is holding a sign that says, "Let's talk about climate change." Renata started our organization, Pelo Clima, and she started with this sign in the city of Pelotas that tried to push for this discussion. And back then, you know, we were fearful of what it could happen to our state that was already seen as a heavily impacted state by climate change. So, you know, it's very sad that Renata's house was completely underwater, and the sign made it through. You know, we still have the sign, but, you know, it's now has the marks of climate change in it. And we also have different stories from the neighbors of Natalia, people that lost their houses and still are looking for the memories that the flooding took for them, the pictures, the documents, and we in our organization try to share these stories to humanize the situation. Okay, and let's talk about a little bit more what we did. We organized, first things first, we organized an international funding campaign. And this funding campaign was very important. We are part of Fridays for Future, so we had the help of a bunch of international activists. And with this amount of money, we did, you know, cleaning campaigns, solidarity kitchens. We bought the right amenities that were necessary for communities that were not seen by the state. and we try to have an impact in not only the problems that people were facing right now. We try to have an impact in the political context of our state. So we organize the biggest climate march in 2024 to push for the connection between the coal that we produce in our state. We are the biggest coal-producing state in Brazil, and the floodings that we were facing. And we did something very pretty. It was very important for the climate movement from our state, and also for the people to have a moment to speak up about what they faced and the solutions that we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for Bruno's sharing. I think I have many further questions that I would like to ask after the presentation, and we will go into the panelists. And next, we're going to welcome our speaker, Yoriko. Just a second. So Yoriko, she's now the Vice Representative of Climate Youth Japan, and she's mostly focused on how science-based solution and community action can address the climate and natural crisis. So let's welcome her sharing.
Okay, so there's a technical issue, but hello everyone. My name is Yoriko. I'm from Japan, and I'm a vice representative of a youth-led climate organization. So who have been to Japan? Yes, but so actually Japan has a lots of natural disasters, and today I'm going to bring up a example that happened in Kyushu. It's the southern part of Japan. It's called Kumamoto Hitoyoshi. This happened in 2020, July, and these people were living with the flood, but this flood was very big compared to the yearly amount of the rainfall. So it kind of just flushed out all the cities, and all the buildings were just drained, and they couldn't live there anymore. But what makes this unique is that they did not just reconstruct all the buildings that were just damaged. They actually teamed up with the local people and then recreated a new system that can co-live with the flood. So if you were the ones who will reconstruct, right, you were just like, usually you will just reconstruct in a way that was in an old way, but they actually used this traditional way of uplifting the entire building. So they used the arrow system, and they created two areas. One is the highly vulnerable area, and second one is the relatively high-risk area. So for the very high-risk area, they made a buffer zone, and they kind of disable people to live there. It's too dangerous for people to live. So they just made a buffer zone. They planted trees so that the sediments are more stable, and there are less flood going out to the river, right? And the sediments going out to the river. And the second zone is called the relatively higher risk zone. This is where they implemented the higher floor. So they used the local knowledge and the local people's construction knowledge, not using the external sources, but they used their own trees in that area, and they employed the people from there so that they can actually use their power and create some employment resources, so they can actually work right there and make money. And where does the money come from? So they actually reached out to some companies and got some ESG investments. So they got fund there, and they can pay the employers. So they didn't just work voluntarily. So the local people were actually also paid. So I wanted to show some slides, but like this is like the overview of my idea. Okay. To give you a visual idea of what I have just explained, this is the Kumamoto Hitoyoshi. As you can see, everything's destroyed. All the buildings were not usable anymore. But actually for the second floor buildings, they just used a very interesting technique. They cut off the first floor, and they use a crane to pick up the second floor, and then they move that, and then they just get rid of the first floor, and then they created this 4 meters high buffer zone, the floor leverage zone, so that when there's another flood coming in, it will just enter there, but they can still use the second floor. So I think that's a very interesting idea to use. Can you go? Okay. So this is the cooperative approach that I've just explained. This is a clear kind of diagram that shows. So the central one is the damaged local government. Next slide. Yeah, the local government. And then for number one, they approach the local company and they get the ESG investment. And in return, this damaged local government will PR that company. So they will say, oh, this company helped us to rebuild this area and so whatever. Next, they go to the government and they got this high resolution forecasting system. So to kind of zone out the areas with high risk and relatively higher risk. So they use like the cutting edge technology in order to do that area differentiations. And then they go to the local citizens to give them some employment. And in return, they got this local knowledge, and so that the people can actually tell to the government, oh, this zone is very dangerous. Oh, we need this and we need that. There's a gap between here. So in order to give them a voice to the government, so they give the local knowledge to the local government. Yeah. Yeah, so this is the new building that I've been talking about. So the first floor is the 4 meters buffer zone. This is the the river, and the one that you can see in the very end is the buffer zone, the very dangerous, highly risk area where the flood always comes in and out. So that's like the place people cannot live anymore. And then this is the buffer zone. So as you can see, now people are walking here, but when there's rainfall, then they can escape to the second floor, but they can kind of live together with the flood, not just escaping from the flood, but they can now live together with the flood. So you don't have to get out from your own country or the place you originally came from. You can just slightly kind of give them a design that you can co-live with the flood. So this is some example that I bring up from my own country, Japan. Thank you, and that's it.
Wow, there's so many people here. Okay. Thank you for Yoriko's sharing. I think it's very like I feel surprised that because I don't really remember this accident that's happened in Japan, and I'm wondering, is this like building, like, is it assist now? Is this a real? I was like concept picture, but oh my god, I really want to visit the area here. Okay, so maybe now, because like we actually have another speaker here, but I think he's still trying to reach here. So I think I'm going to like introduce you guys to come to the stage, and we can start our panel discussion. Yeah, just take it easy. Okay. So welcome you guys again. So first of all, I would like to ask Bruno and Lois about like how can countries can better integrate climate risk analytics such as GGA indicators, loss and damage assessment, and early warning system into national recovery frameworks so that post-disaster reconstruction align with long-term adaptation goals rather than recreating pre-disaster vulnerabilities.
Great, great. Yeah, after the flooding that we had in 2024, there were some new technologies that were implemented, especially right now we are just, the government just released a technology that warns everyone in their message, in their phones. This technology, I was in Korea this year also, and it's very common in other places where they have common flooding disasters. So it's overall good that it's being implemented in our state. And we also have, I didn't explore it a lot, but in my city, there is a flooding prevention system with water pumps and walls and dikes. But, you know, you always need to think about that these hard infrastructures, they demand maintenance, they demand, you know, specific care of each different government and a long-term planning, which is oftentimes quite difficult in Latin America. You know, you have different ideologies of different governments that might not believe that this is an issue. So specifically, you need some things that are persistent, and I think nature-based solutions might be the best ones for us to implement. In my city, you know, we had the problem of expanding the city inside the river, so there was an expansion. So these dikes and walls, they are necessary, but you know, they demand maintenance. So it's hard to go after that.
Royce, do you want also?
All right. I think the first one is the natural-based solution. As I'm really impressed from the Japanese case, and I think it's very good way to implement to our country and in the also the Guangfu community. And I think this is the first one. I think it's very important. But right now they just face the I think they are ongoing because the disaster just happened, and so they need to make sure that everyone will protect. So they have to build up so concrete and to move out the people at first. So maybe later, maybe the next year they can have better idea, like the better ecological solution like that. And also the second one, I think we need to enhance our early warning system, because in the Guangfu village there are many indigenous people, and also you can see someone cannot move by himself. He cannot walk. Yeah, so I think some vulnerable people we should take care more than others. So maybe the warning system, you need to have the indigenous version, and the language or the common sense, because actually we don't know the terms. We are unfamiliar with the terms Berry Lake. Yeah, so we don't know the disaster will become so serious. Yeah, we don't know that. So I think the education is one of I think that is education, but we need to know the terms and to be care and to have the awareness of those disasters. Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your response. And I have a little further question for Bruno, because while I'm listening to your presentation, I'm kind of curious that what did the government do after the what did they actually do after the disaster?
Well, there are different stages of responses. You know, the first stage, it was a bit confused. It sent people out of the main city, because the resources were not arriving because all our major highways were completely destroyed or stuck. So it blew up some bridges to open space for trucks to arrive. It cleaned the center part of the city, and since there was a big international coverage of the disaster, it wanted to most of the time show that disaster had already passed and things were fine, when it had not. The peripheries of the Porto Alegre, they were still underwater. So it was a moment that the government really lacked in response. And when we were doing like cleaning actions in the poorest regions, we had no assistance. We had to improvise electrical connections to make water jet work. So this was the first stage. The second stage, we had some changes in some policies that, in a sense, allow for the disaster to be as big as it was. Most of the time, these changes, they occurred in the judicial system, not willingness of the government. And in Porto Alegre, we actually had a response from the people that we as a movement, it's tough to wrap our heads around, because we had an election just after the flooding, and the government that delivered the flooding to us, delivered the disaster, was reelected with a high percentage. And it's tough because we think that maybe, people will get affected by climate change and they will realize that climate deniers are not the ones that they should put in government. But in the reality, there was a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of things saying that this was not climate change. This was actually, a big rain that happened and we could do nothing. And they were responding in some shape or form, but in the reality, we know that they try to hide the real causes of the problem. And that's why we thought that the march was so important after the flooding, because we were really pushing the connection of the actions that they did and the flooding that took place.
Wow, this is like, actually, I think Taiwan have the similar issue, because actually these typhoons, there's actually scientists saying that this is related to climate change, but climate change are never really be linked together, and people just think that this is natural disaster, and they wouldn't think further. What should we do to do more? Even adaptation, it's not really mentioned during this year. And thank you so much for sharing. And I'm going to give Yoriko another question. It's what's prevents communities and governments from transitioning away from traditional hard infrastructure responses?
Okay. Thank you for asking. I think for that question, I think there are three important entities. One, the people who gives the fund, the money to change stuff. Second, the people who gives out the technology in order to enable that idea. Third one is the people who actually dirty their hands and actually do those projects on that land. So we need money, we need funds, we need technology, and we need the constructions. And for at my example, the money came from ESG investments. So the companies that are interested or want to know more about or wants to support some kind of climate-related projects, they give and invest the money. So that was crucial in order to move the government to get that technology. The local government cannot just go to the government and say, oh, help us, without having any fund and any resources. But since they got the money from the the investment, they can effectively go into the government and get the support from them to get the early system warnings and also the distinctive area zoning, the highly risked area and the place that can relatively, can live, right? So to answer your question, there are 3 entities, and for the local governments, I think it's important to find places, find people who can actually invest them. And in my case, one thing that was important is that the local people didn't go individually to the government, but they actually gathered out and had some meetings and kind of talked together what is some effective proposal that we can give to the government. So they actually come together, they study together, they kind of had a tactic. So I think that made this example a very effective and a very good example of a adapted local adaptation. Yeah.
I'm very curious that how did the local team up?
Yeah, because like after the disaster, they had nowhere to go. So they were stuck in that place. They had this temporary housing that they can live in. So like they were kind of forced to stay in that. Yeah, it's working. Yeah.
Because like actually in Taiwan's cases, the areas it is the indigenous area, and there's actually 7 tribes that's in the area, and every tribe they have a different leader. So I think it's like this is the problem that we're kind of facing to like really make people together and think of those things. I'm wondering if Bruno have like similar like issues are happening in Brazil.
In Brazil, specifically in our region, Rio Grande do Sul, oftentimes is seen as a place that, is not a house for indigenous people. It doesn't have quilombola people, but that's not the reality. We work alongside a bunch of those communities, and during the actions that the government did, they were very forgotten about in the reconstruction process and how they were affected. We actually denounced a closed housing system that was pumping water inside a quilombola communities, which is a traditional community in Pelotas that is called Passo dos Negros, and this thing really took the national stage as a very obvious case of environmental racism that is very common in our state and in Brazil, and how the communities that were most historically affected by the slavery, the persecution after the slavery, they are still mostly affected by climate change, and how those relations continue even after the years that pass from that horrible past.
That's kind of like sad, like to hear that it's still like happening. So are the people still staying in the same area? So far?
Yeah. Because the way that Quilombola people see themselves is as a resistance. It is historically, those formation of black people are from people that fled from slavery and resist together to maintain their way of living. So we really push for them to have a space in the climate discussion in our state, and also to present the solutions that they have to their territories. And if we compare, as all throughout the world, indigenous people protect the amount of lands here in Brazil, and we are actually the second most dangerous country to be a climate activist, and I think around 50% of people that get killed for being an activist are indigenous people here in Brazil. So yeah, it's very important that we use, in a sense, our privilege to talk about the situation and to push for the ideas that they have to be listened, and for them to have a space to talk about and be listened.
Yeah, I believe like there's the COP30 does make the Amazonian people really being heard, but just I hope that there's more possibility for their voices to really come inside to the venue. And I have a question for Lois. I was talking about the 7 tribes. So I would like to ask you, like, what are the key challenges that local communities face during recovery, and what do they believe is most needed to ensure integrity and fairness in adaptation decision making?
All right. Okay. So from I think we need to have the government aid. Because we have different tribes, so we need to communicate with others, and we have to hold the meeting for each groups. Yeah. So, and I think if Taiwanese government can have the knowledge, can tell them, like, I really love the idea about the Japanese case, because we don't have that knowledge. So if the education at the institution can give us that kind of knowledge, I think that would be better. And Taiwan has the NCDR. It's National Science and Technology Center for Disaster Reduction, and the center provides the scenarios that about the climate service and also disaster analysis tools. So, for example, NCDR can show potential hazard maps for the flooding, landslide, and different natural disaster, and they can have the ability to calculate the risk and to simulate the period return event for another extremely heavy rain. Yeah, so which helps government agency that makes better decision for the every communities, every tribes. Yeah, so I think it's the most important thing. I think. Yeah.
Thank you. And I have a further question for Yoriko. It might be a little bit like critical, but because we talk about like nature-based solution, would you think like the solution for the case that you show, it's the Kumamoto? Do you think it's natural-based? Like, because this actually it's still just like it's
yes.
mostly concrete. Yeah.
Yes, I think. Thank you for the question.
Yeah.
I think it's a natural-based solution. It depends on what you define as NBS, but in a sense that they use the local species for the trees, I think it's NBS. They also conducted some research that if they kind of put this species and species A and B together, do they survive together or not? Because there are some like allelopathy, like chemicals that might damage like the other plants for some like certain species. So they actually did that research also in order to kind of have a long-term NBS in that area. Yeah. So to answer the question, yes, I think it was an NBS.
Okay, thank you so much. Because I feel like for nature-based solutions, there are like many different kind of like definition or practice. Yes, practice. And so, really, thank you for your answer. So I think that's pretty much every of my question, and I feel like our fourth speaker, he's not able to come here, and I'm wondering if there's any questions like in the audience? Oh.
Primeiro eu vou falar em português, né, para a gente entender, e depois eu vou estar falando em inglês para eles entenderem. Um desastre, ele é terrível, e aqui no Brasil a gente costuma dizer que a última esperança é a que morre. Pergunto também para entender o lado bom, mesmo que às vezes pareça não ter esse lado bom, né? A energia de estar junto com um único propósito. E eu gostaria de saber justamente como é a sensação de sobreviver a um desastre, em poucas palavras, justamente com esse pensamento. E agora eu vou falar em inglês, né? Tentar. A disaster is terrible, and here in Brazil we often say that hope is the last thing to die. I'm also asking to understand the positive side, even if it doesn't seem to exist sometimes. The energy of being together with a single purpose. What is the feeling of surviving a disaster in a few words?
So to refine your question, what do we feel, or what is the hope in disasters adaptation?
It's like how's the core things to make people stay together and recover from the disaster.
Okay, so I have the mic. So to answer first, I think it's to have a same purpose, the same vision is critical, obviously. I'm so happy actually that COP just was also able to do today also. After the disaster happened yesterday, I think this was enabled due to all the people's hope that we can come together and we can still like talk together to have some solution to this disastrous like climate change, right? So I think if people were just like kind of reluctant and they were kind of already like giving up like climate change, people would not come together again to the COP venue after that fire, right? So I think as we can see in this scenario, right, we also came together. I think we share this a common purpose, and that's how we enable people to continuously talk, continuously argue, and to find the best solution, I guess.
Obrigado pela pergunta. I'm gonna answer in Portuguese and then in English. Eu acho que o desastre, ele causa um impacto não só físico, e no impacto na vida e nas memórias que as pessoas têm acesso, em perder suas fotos, em perder suas imagens, seus documentos, suas lembranças, mas também a gente causa um impacto mental nas pessoas. Passamos por muitas pessoas, não só que foram afetadas, mas que trabalharam na limpeza. São 3 dias que leva para limpar uma casa só, e tu passa por toda a vida da pessoa, por processos de que ela se sente, que ela vai percebendo o que aconteceu com ela. Então, isso é muito difícil. E a gente sempre fala que vamos ser os primeiros impactados, mas a gente nunca está pronto para isso, né? We always say that we are going to be the first impacted, but we are never ready to face that. And during the process of cleaning the houses, we go through the whole lives of people, and by that, you need to face different stages of their life, the memories that they have, and the process of accepting what they faced and what we are facing. And it's very hard, it's very tough, and of course there are good things that might come out of it in a process of rebuilding and thinking more about the process we are facing. But it's very hard to be the ones impacted and to be with the most impacted.
All right. I want to show a slide. Can I? This is what I talked about last week, and yeah, because after the disaster, yes, and not to use because I hide the slides. I already hide the slides. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So because last time I just talked about after the disaster, many people and across the districts and also the national list. Yeah. You can just scroll to the last side. I'm sorry. Nobody's in outside. Yeah, this one. You can just. Okay, so you can see that after the disaster, many people, like the Jim brothers and the monks. No, you cannot show that. Sorry, because I hide the slide. Sorry. Yeah, so you can see across nationalities and across the professionals, regions, everyone, they join the team to help the Grandfu village. Like dig out the muds and then you can see that. Yeah, and this is me, and this another teammate. And so we went to the Grandfu village, like many people, and we went there to help them. I think it's not helping. We just said about the situation, so we want to part of this event. So then we went there. Many people you can see, and also many. Can you next slide? Yeah, here. Tell. You can see many different countries. India and Vietnam and so many all over the world. They join the not rescue team, but yeah, kind of like the rescue team. So I think the most important thing about the disaster is we suffer from the disaster, and we are the same. So we are not an outsider. So yeah, this is my conclusion.
Like in Taiwan, we call them the shovel heroes. Like they just bring shovels there, and the train was really packed, and people just go there and shovel and pull all the mud away. And I just think I have another question for you guys, because actually, like after disaster, we will talk about the compensation, because the houses was gone, and those kind of their assets are gone, so the government will give them the compensation. It's like loss and damage. So I'm wondering, like, if you guys have how did the government do for the compensation? And because there's actually some arguments inside Taiwan, they are saying, like, is there any standard to build up to give the compensation under this kind of climate disaster? So I'm wondering if you have any experiences of it. Yes.
Okay, so there's a place near Porto Alegre is kind of similar to Belém in a sense that there are islands around it, and the islands of Porto Alegre, they are the first one to get affected by the floodings, and until today, those people did not receive the housings that the government promised for them to leave their place. And the houses that the government is delivering, we visited some in Vale do Taquari, which is one of the most affected regions, together with the International Human Rights Court. And what we saw was, cement containers, similar to containers, that were really far away from the city and very, it trapped a lot of heat, and it did not have the necessary standards of living that people once had when they were in a house with a grass field behind it where they could plant stuff and have a more sustainable way of living. And sadly, the houses that were promised, they often are very delayed. So solutions that were supposed to be only temporary become standard. So you have shelters that are still there that people are living, but you know the government should have delivered cheap houses, and you know because it was the main cause of the problem was the lack of planning that the government had. And yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you. Yoriko, do you have any response?
I'm not really knowledgeable on that field of how to effectively kind of create the policy, but as I mentioned, right, I think it's really important to use both local knowledge and like the bigger kind of vague knowledge. So in my case, right, they first used like the satellite image, and the government did like the very technological stuff, and then they kind of give some like first idea, the first draft of the reconstruction. But then the people who really lives there know more and how it really can like use or not, right? So after then, they kind of give them more preciseness into that draft, so that the local people who are the ones who will live with that kind of technology can kind of use that place in a more sustainable and a long term. Yeah, so I don't know how they specifically built up and made that effective proposal, but I think it's important to always get this both two sides of this technological and the local people side.
Okay. Actually, no. Our last, just come in. Yeah, our last speaker, finally arrived. And actually, I was talking about loss and damage stuff. Wow, it's very sweaty. I see how, that's okay. But I want to kind of answer, like, response for your response. Yes, it's like you mentioned that the technology and the recovery, the locals actually joined and they got paid. And I think this is like a very important process that like they can like they still, because they might don't have work because the stores are all closed. So during the recovery, they can still have like money. They can like live their life. Yeah. So I think that's one of the very important solutions. Yes. So I was talking about, my question is that how did, like, after the disasters, how are the people being like compensated? Because like there are some arguments that we having like people, we don't have like a standard to like really say, oh, how much you get, and people might say like it's not enough for me and those kind of stuff. So it's kind of related to loss and damage, because it's going to be the money for loss and damage. Yeah, so I'm wondering, do you have any answer for maybe form policy or what the importance is?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm so sorry I'm late. I came from another place, but yeah, thanks for inviting me. Yes, so I'm Jeff. I'm from the Philippines, but mainly I'm representing Loss and Damage Youth Coalition. So we're a coalition of young people, young leaders who are advocating for the Loss and Damage Fund. Interestingly, it seems that the loss and damage conversation is really mainstream in the climate space, especially during COP or SBs. But on the ground, people don't know what really loss and damage is. Not saying that people don't know the actual damage that is happening after the typhoons. It's just that the term is really technical, and it's not the mainstream term being used in the communities. For example, in the Philippines, we all know that when a typhoon comes, it's just damage and like people died, agriculture is destroyed, whatsoever. But yeah, as we talk about loss and damage, I think I agree that it's really a very technical topic, especially for the communities. But I really believe that they actually know it by heart. And when we talk about the damage or the fund or the compensation, that it's okay. The compensation that the communities should receive, we don't have an actual standard actually, because based on science, we cannot attribute yet. There's an attribution science that we call, but we cannot because we cannot give we cannot quantify in money how much the life of a human is, because we cannot. It's oops, I spoke a Filipino word, but it's kind of you can compensate it with money, the loss of life, right? But of course, you can give a value for the rice, for the agriculture, whatsoever. So I think that as we speak about loss and damage here in the Blue Zone, which I am following the negotiations, I also think that it should come in hand with how we translate it with community, how we talk about it with community, because with the loss and damage fund, it's actually the community who will be using it. They are the one who will be accessing it. And for our audience, just for you to know, last November 10, during the first day of the COP30, it was announced that there will be a $250 million for people to access, and each country's communities, organizations can access it. You just have to send your proposal, and it will end on May 2026. But of course, we have to note that if we really want an accessible funding for everyone, it shouldn't be hard for people to access it. That's why we're actually trying to encourage the fund for responding to loss and damage, the secretariat, to do not make it hard for people to access it, because for the very reason for that this fund is existing is for people to access it. But then you have to send proposals, and when you submit proposals, it has to be technical, and for it to be approved. But then before you submit a proposal, you have to like research and have it proofread by people if it's actually going to be successful in your application. So it's a very technical topic, but again, I think if we want to push for the loss and damage and like more funding for it, it should go hand in hand with the community. They should know technicalities of it, and usually everything that is with the fund. Yeah.
I have a little further question for you, because like we were talking, so the loss and damage is like international levels of money. So, but like if it's inside the national level, like is there any systems that the financing systems that must be addressed to guarantee justice for most affected communities?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question, because for example, in the Philippines, I'm not bragging when I say this, but in the Philippines, we're actually pushing a same bill, a same mechanism with the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage, but we call it Clima bill. So it's the local version of the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage. But the caveat is the Clima bill is an accountability bill. For example, if a company or a corporation or a business pollute something, like for example, a ship was shipwrecked and spilled enormous amount of oil in a vast ocean, they will be held accountable. So because they did damage in the ocean, they will be held accountable based on our law, and they will compensate how much the damage they did. And then the compensation or the money that they will be penalized, the amount will be given to the community, which is the affected fisher folks. So because they can't, of course, fish because there's an oil spill. They can't fish for a very long time because you have to wait for the sea to come back to its original status. So the money will goes to them, and it will be used for them to feed their family and continue their normal lives. But it's not happening yet. It's the goal of the bill, and I am not sure if it's something that is happening in the other parts of the world or other countries. But we aim to be the model for other countries, because we don't want to just depend on the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage, because as I have mentioned, it's just 250 million US dollars. And how many countries do we have? Like 100? I'm not sure. I just watch Miss Universe, but I don't count the countries. Like 150 plus?
You mean
The countries in the world.
I think
200?
200. I think 200
200
or
plus.
So. Yeah, because like
Oh.
there's 197 parties in.
Oh,
in
I
Zycop,
see. So the 250 million will not. It's just peanuts for everyone if everyone will be applying for the fund. So we have to create other mechanisms so that we can still leverage the mechanisms and use it for the for the national context, like for example in the Philippines. And I hope other countries will do the same.
It's very nice to hear the example from you because in Taiwan we also have I would say fund because like for the companies that they are paying the carbon fee and it's going to be a little pool, but like there's many organizations or many different policy want that money, maybe geothermal, maybe like many other things. So it's of course the best if it's come to maybe adaptation, maybe loss and damage. That would be a very nice thing. So if we have your example, maybe it's something we can persuade our government. Maybe I don't know if like others have something to talk about loss and damage. You want to anything to share? If there's nothing, any question left? Okay.
I have a question about anxiety because, for example, in Porto Alegre, what happened with the people that suffer a natural disaster? They get anxiety and they are afraid of it happening again. What happens when a lot of people get anxiety and they are afraid of living it again, and they are thinking about it every time? I want to know what happened with them, what are done to them to help it.
I like your question very much. It's like we always talk about infrastructure, but like the mental health is also very, very important. So like any of you want to respond to this question?
I think obrigado pela pergunta. Thanks for the question. Hello. Okay. Thanks for the question. I think anxiety is a tough problem to face after the floodings, and I think a lot of people during the response are actually, putting to aside these problems of mental harms that they are facing. During the Solidarity Kitchens, people receive messages that their house was completely destroyed and they kept working, because, that way I can just don't think about it. And we saw that fishermen that had lost everything, had only their boat. They were doing rescues with their boats. And in a sense, I think that there is a way of, you're actually doing something to help others and this helps you. But there will come a time that you need to face what you suffered and to think about and talk to a psychologist and to actually, understand that the fears that you have, they might, that's the problem with eco anxiety, because the fears that you have might be, actually real, that might happen to you again. And if we believe in science, it will most likely happen to that region again. But if you're in the privileged position of, making the choices that will leave you in a less fearful situation, for some people is to move out, for some people is to maybe rent a place that's a bit higher, that will not be facing the same problems. But at the same time, this is not a individual thing to solve. We need a structural change to actually, you know, combat these anxieties. And I also would say that people, by organizing with others that want to fight against it, I think that's a good way of fighting the anxiety that comes out of disasters. It can be through responses in the short term, but also, for example, in Pelo Clima, you know, we try to push for the declaration of climate emergency in our state, and, you know, do an advocacy push in our state to talk about, for everyone to talk more about climate change. So I think that's it.
Okay. Any others want to share?
Yeah, I think as for my example, I went to the Guangfu village, and then they have the church. They gave us very warmful and very heartening. They have spa, massage. Yeah, after, because we are shovel, and then they will massage us and prayed for us. So, and many the victims, yeah, the residents live in the Guangfu. They went to the churches and different religions, and also different religions. I know the monks, they are also friendly, and they so I think, and I know a case in the the Shaolin village. Shaolin village is, I think it's 10 years ago in Taiwan. There's a very horrible disaster, and the whole village were covered by the muds, and like, I think there's more than 100 casualties. And then, but the government, and they collaborate with some institutions, and to have the psychological therapy. Yeah, and they will have like more than 10 times to talk with the people and to the residents. Yeah, and so I think it's a way to comfort the people who live there. Yeah, so.
Can you hear me? Okay, so like historically speaking, as some of you guys know, Japan is located in a very dangerous area. We have a lot of earthquake. We have 4 plates in one country, so the earthquakes are nonstop, and so people lived with the natural disasters. And I think Japan is one of the country where we have a really nice education of how you can fastly evacuate. So we always have this anxiety. When we have the earthquakes, what we should do. We know what to do already, because our ancestors and our parents and us also have been practicing every year, I would say, or every semester, how to evacuate in an emergency. So yeah, therapy is essential, but I think a technical way to kind of evacuate is also important. And I think that eventually leads to lessen your anxiety, because you know what to do in that case. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, but it's good so that people can hear me. Hello, can you hear me? Hello. No. Hello. Yeah, you can hear me. Okay. So I think for me, I just want to reiterate what he said, that Bruno said that. Anxiety is valid, eco-anxiety is valid, especially with our age. But I think the most important thing to do is how we can channel that anxiety, how we can use that to really call for an action, because it's unfair that we are experiencing anxiety when we did not contribute to the crisis that we are dealing with, right? So like what he said, we have to channel it into organizing more people. So we invite them to our climate events. We train people so that they can speak about what is happening to their communities. There are also other ways we can channel the anxiety through music, through other means of media, in social media. in film or in drawing. So there's a lot of things that we can do. I am privileged that I can do therapy. I am in therapy right now, but that's because I'm privileged. But for other people who can't access that, there should be other ways that we should do so that they can access it, especially with the marginalized communities. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your response. And I think there's a audience that wants to say something, but he or she is kind of shy. So I'm going to help him or her to speak the speech. So he or she said that any action to mitigation and prevent natural disaster must be preceded by education, starting in childhood, continuing through adolescence and into adult life. We need to address environmental preservation with the same urgency that we place on providing food for our family. We must engage politically or in any other way possible to compel our public leaders to adopt serious and consistent environmental preservation policies in order to avoid the worst consequence, natural disasters. And there's some more. Some countries do not know how to deal with current population demands and simply continue to exploit natural resources, either in their own territories or in other countries through multinational corporations. In a globalized and still imperialistic world. Yes, this is the world we're pretty much facing. So, thank you very much for everybody's participation. And I'm going to give a short briefing for everything that's for today's speech. First of all, thank you so much for everyone's being here, and thank you. And I feel like this is a really meaningful sharing and session. We mentioned a lot of things like the recovery have to be a natural-based solution, and how does local education is important, the importance of local education on climate impacts, like how Japan, you do a lot of disaster education to make people know how to face them and what to do when it's happened. For example, what happened yesterday, and people actually evacuated very fast, and no one some people get hurt, but it's not very severe. And also, the government have to be able to respond rapidly, and also in the process of recovery, locals and governments, they're teaming up. Their connection is very important. To make the local able to really participate in the recovery process is very important. And also the fund for loss and damage, the compensation, and the money for the recovery. It's also how to build the mechanism, systems. It's also very important during the rebuilding. And also, we, the climate activists, is also very important. We have to link disaster with climate change, and to make people know that's what's really happening and why are we facing this disaster. This is not just natural disaster. This is climate change. This is human cause. And also, we have to mention the indigenous people. They have their very important knowledges and mostly are living in the vulnerable area. And it's very important to include all their voices inside, and to build a very to let them have their own right to live in their land. And also the last is about the climate anxiety. Maybe it's not only about climate anxiety; it's also about the disasters. And this is an international thing. We youth, the future generation, they're also going to face every of this. So the mental health is also very, very important during this age. So this is pretty much everything that we have talked about in this session, and this is really meaningful for everyone to join. Thank you so much.
Oi. Para os brasileiros que querem tirar foto, se vocês quiserem fazer uma fila E é assim que eles tirarem as fotos aqui mais oficiais, vocês quiserem se aproximar e tirar algumas fotos, acredito que eles fiquem bem tranquilos com isso. Eu pedi pra menina avisar, tá bom?